If you believe there was reason to be concerned when Christian Harris started the season on IR for the Texans, maybe you should look right now and rethink that. We're going to talk about that and more on this edition of The Bullpen.
He floats one wide open, and there he goes. Tagged down for a Texan touchdown.
Hello and welcome to The Bullpen. I am James Roy, and this is a bullpen bit, the little mini episode during the week to kind of give y'all something between our recaps and previews and live episodes. So thanks for tuning in. If you're listening, you can watch it on YouTube, and if you are watching this, you could always listen to it on your commute if you'd like. So make sure you look up The Bullpen, a Houston Texans podcast, and find us wherever you get your podcasts so you can listen to us however you would like. Well, let's talk about the Texans linebacker room. I will be the first to admit that I was in the camp of drafting a linebacker a lot higher than the Texans did in the draft due to concerns with depth. And I thought what my concern was had played out. I mean, it did in terms of Christian Harris being injured and the Texans then being asked to, one, start Henry To'oTo'o, who is great as a third linebacker in base defense, but maybe wasn't my favorite to be a starter. And then also, looking at the depth of the room, if there's any sort of rotation or any of those players are asked to play, what happens and how much does the product on the field diminish because of it? Well, let's first look at To'oTo'o. To'oTo'o has been great. He made massive leaps and bounds of improvement throughout the offseason. Even he talked about losing weight, getting quicker, and it showed on the field. I mean, he has been great. And alongside Azeez Al-Shaair, that has been a great linebacker room. And then we get into the other concern I expressed, which was the depth. And we sort of run into, I don't know how to put this, through the first 2 weeks of the season, the Texans have exclusively played Azeez Al-Shaair and Henry To'oTo'o. No other linebacker in the linebacker room has touched the field on a singular play for the Texans outside of those two. Now, I know what you're saying, the Texans, isn't their base defense a 4-3? Isn't there some times where they would have to have a third linebacker on the field? And to that, I'll say, from what I've read, it would appear as though the Texans are running a base 4-2-5 or a nickel, depending on how you want to address it. And that sort of brings the secondary into the discussion. Now, looking, obviously, the cornerbacks, while not relevant to the discussion, I'll bring them up. Lassiter and Stingley are the only cornerbacks on the roster who have gotten run. Where it becomes relevant is the cornerbacks that haven't. So I think it was perceived that maybe Miles Bryant or any number of other cornerbacks in that room would be used as the nickel cornerback, but no other cornerback has played for the Texans outside of Lassiter and Stingley. And that begs the question, what are the Texans doing in a nickel scheme for nickel without any cornerbacks that are not your starting two cornerbacks playing? And so that's when we look at the safety room and we see that Jalen Pitre and Jimmy Ward have both played 100% of the snaps thus far this season. And the other two safeties, Eric Murray and Kalen Bullock, have each gotten significant snap share. And what this tells me is that, obviously we've talked at length about Jalen Pitre's usage, but this tells me that almost exclusively he is being used as the nickel, if you will. Him or Jimmy Ward, I didn't get a breakdown of who's playing where, but my guess is that the Texans are using Pitre as the nickel. And this actually is really smart when you think about it. Pitre is a guy who lives in the box, loves to get tackled. I don't know if you watched the Bears game, but I mean, if you didn't, then you missed out because Pitre had some hits that I can only describe as being as close as you can get to an illegal hit in the modern NFL without being an illegal hit. Jalen Pitre is out there crushing people at linebacker-esque at tackling. And that brings up why him being on the team and his newfound usage, which has made him far better this season than I think he was last season, a massive improvement overall and probably a breakout year for him, is the fact that he's basically being used, it's called the star safety role is what I've been told, but he's being used as a hybrid nickel cornerback, safety, linebacker kind of thing. So the reason the Texans don't have to play any of their linebacker depth is because Jalen Pitre is technically a third linebacker on the field at all times, unless he's not filling that role. And if he's not filling that role, he's usually nickel or sometimes playing up high at safety. And so honestly, it's interesting to see the Texans do this. And I can't help but think maybe Christian Harris's injury opened up the possibility of Jalen Pitre being able to be used in this role, but I can't say for sure. Now, some of you might remember, and I did briefly mention it earlier, that Jimmy Ward played nickel in San Francisco. I mentioned that he has played significant nickel corner in Houston, and I think that's where we open up to getting more play time. I believe it's 50 to 40% from Eric Murray and Kalen Bullock, and I love this for a lot of reasons. One, in week one, I don't know if you watched Jimmy Ward get, he was a little out of position. I don't think that it spoke to his skill level as a safety, but I think that when you look at what happened, it just takes one play, right? When you're playing safety, you're the final level, and all you have to do is make one mistake, and you can literally change the course of the game in a very bad way if you fail at your job. So I think the usage of him in the box, I don't know if they're doing that right now, but I'd believe it if someone told me. But I think that Kalen Bullock has shown to be, he's literally a ball hawk. I would call him Kalen Ball Hawk if I was to come up with his nickname. Or, for the sake of emoji usage, maybe you could call him Young Bull. And then just use, I commented on someone's post with that. That's the only reason it's on my mind. But I think that Kalen Bullock showing, and Eric Murray, who drew the ire of a lot of Texans fans over the course of his time here, when he got extended, there was a lot of people that were really mad that happened. But as a high-level backup who has starter potential on other rosters and has played decently, I'm not going to, say that Eric Murray is the best possible safety. Otherwise, he would be the starter. But having him in that depth, I think, also plays into your ability to get that varied usage where Jimmy Ward and Jalen Pitre can kind of just be wherever they need to be. And then Eric Murray and Kalen Bullock I can only assume they're taking turns at this point, but maybe they're both playing safety, and but I don't know. The 100% snap share for Jalen Pitre and Jimmy Ward leads me to believe that Kalen Bullock and Eric Murray are splitting in some way. But whatever they're doing up there, it's working to some extent. This defense has been legit. The last thing I'll talk about is the return of Christian Harris. So Christian Harris is on IR and is not able to come back until week 4. I think that this bodes well, this development of how the Texans are running that particular part of the defense in terms of having that hybrid linebacker thing out of Pitre and being able to just run Toa, who has improved drastically, and Azeez Al-Shaair side by side, shows really well for what was my main issue with the Texans linebacker room coming into the season, which was depth. Because now when you look at it, when Christian Harris comes back, you have Christian Harris and Azeez Al-Shaair starting opposite each other, and you have Toa coming in. And in all likelihood, Shaair will probably continue to be the guy who stays on the field. He is. There's a lot of players on that defense playing 100% of snap share. That it's not surprising that they are. Outside of the defensive line, pretty much every starter is on the field every single snap defensively. But Shaair, as the linebacker, I'd expect to be the quarterback of the defense. You can't have one or the other rotating and getting less plays. You have to have your guy you're calling the plays into, unless the Texans call them into someone else. But I would foresee that Harris comes in, and maybe I'd be interested to see Toa continue to get run. And I think with Christian Harris coming back from injury, that's likely. And I think it could continue to be a thing throughout the course of the season. Maybe like a 60-40, 70-30 split. I just don't want to see Toa erased from this defense because of Christian Harris's return. As much as I love Christian Harris as a player and wouldn't mind seeing him, come back and be exactly who we know he can be, I am interested to see how the Texans handle that upon return. But I kind of outlined how I could see it going, and we'll keep an eye on that. Maybe Tom and I can talk about it when the time comes. Well, thank you for tuning into this bullpen bit. I have been James Roy, and today we talked about the linebacker room and the versatility throughout the defense that has allowed the Texans to only play 2 linebackers for 100% of the snaps through 2 weeks of the season. As always, You can find me at James Roy NFL on Twitter and at M1 Texans fan on Instagram. You can find the Bullpen on YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter at the Bullpen Cast. And thanks for tuning in. As always, stay classy, Houston, and vamos Texans. Thanks for tuning in to The Bullpen, a Texans podcast. Please like, comment, subscribe, and follow along for more Texans talk from The Bullpen.